Gali, meragali, speragali nichta. No matter where in this wild, wacky, and sometimes wonderful world you might be, thank you for making the Highbury Squad part of your day. Don't say I don't do nice things for you, squaddies. Let's rock and roll.
Mind the gap between the train and the platform. Please stand clear of the discussion doors. The next stop is Highbury Squad.
Just a couple of days ago, we had one of our favourites, Rebecca Lowe, on, and let's break him in gently, making his Highbury Squad debut. The goat of all goats, one of my favourite humans, Mr. David Ornstein.
Not quite as exciting as that, the montage at the beginning, but I'm enthused by your excitement, and I'm absolutely delighted to be with you, Sophie. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no, the pleasure is all ours, and I can't begin to thank you enough. Although, you know, I'm going to go studs up 2-footed on you, even though everyone will be like, are you mad? Are you actually going to card David Ornstein? Well, he did say 7:30. He was running a bit late. Let's face it, he's very busy right now. There's something called the January transfer window. But if I show favoritism, I'll be accused, just like some of these referees. So a yellow card for David Ornstein on his debut here at Highbury Squad.
I feel ashamed. I think that's the first yellow card in my career. I've had a red card in my career, but that's my first. No, I once got a yellow card for saying "come on, ref" after a decision was made, and that was regarded as dissent. So I did get a booking, and I've been sent off once for a last man challenge. But yeah, that was about like 25 years ago. So you've shown me my first yellow card in a long time.
I'm thinking did you play like a number 10 role? Were you an Odegaard?
Good guess. For a bit, yeah, very creative sort of central midfielder, but then it was more sort of a little bit deeper, right in the middle of the park, sort of
very nice.
Duracell bunny, non-stop work rate, lacking in quality, I think. But yeah, I actually spent a year on trial with Chelsea. I'm sorry to admit it on your podcast.
You're heading for a red.
Like, 11 or something, and I didn't quite make it, but well, I came nowhere near making it, but it was a fun experience all the same.
I love that. Love that. And remember to listen to our Chief Like Officer. Please hit the like button on the way in. Squaddies at ease. Welcome, everyone. So many comments already coming in. David, this is a crazy season for you. But before we get stuck into a little bit of what your world is like during these times, I wanted to get your take on the game last night. It was a fun match. I don't think we've been able to say that about Arsenal too much this season. And of course, winning a North London derby is always going to be special. The continual emergence of Lewis Skelly, unbelievable young player. To see, Trossard score again, Big Gabby playing the way that he did. And of course, even though they're on the sidelines, seeing Saka and Nwaneri there, very special. What did you make of the North London derby last night, and Arsenal still very much in the title race for you?
Yeah, so it wasn't the highest quality of match we've seen this season. There are a lot of mistakes from both sides, but the intensity is always there on that occasion. Not seen a Wednesday night North London derby in some time, which really upped the ante in terms of the atmosphere. A lot riding on it for both teams. And it was no surprise to me to see Tottenham open the scoring. They always seem to, or often seem to, at the Emirates. And Arsenal tend to come back, which proved to be the case. Arsenal's early dominance continued what we've seen recently in the Man United and Newcastle games, and just not finishing their chances. And there's always the possibility that they get stung, but they do respond pretty well on the whole to adversity. And that seemed to kick them into life. That they should have been out of sight, really. I think Declan Rice saying should have had 10 is maybe a bit of a stretch, but I understand what he was getting at. Tottenham will be particularly disappointed given their season in the Premier League. They had some they took the lead. They had some other opportunities too. It was a bit of a nervy night for the new goalkeeper. But been really impressed by. They've got some real good young talent in Archie Gray and Lucas Bergvall. And the keeper, of course. But I did feel, and I was on Sky the night before, I felt the importance of Arsenal grinding their way, not back into the title race, but not letting Liverpool get any further away. Liverpool drawing at Forest and having a couple of scratchy results of late, the draw with Manchester United. Like Arsenal had to win that. To sort of keep tabs, close the gap a little bit, even if it's temporarily, because Liverpool have that game in hand. It was something that Mikel Arteta needed, the club needed after the Gabriel Jesus injury and the recent results. It was probably deserved. A bit fortuitous with the equalising goal, with the corner that was awarded. But it's a massive 3 points for Arsenal, but it means nothing unless they can form some consistency now. And that will be the big test for Arteta. Your overall question was in the title race. Yeah, I do think Arsenal will be up there for the rest of the season. They have to be. In Mikel Arteta's 6th season, there's an expectation from the fan base, from the public, from the media that they challenge for trophies again for the 3rd season in the row in the Premier League and try and get over the line this time. They're within touching distance. Yeah, they've got injuries, but so has every club. They've got a January market, which they can try and strengthen in. They've got the quality there. They've got some experience now. And I do expect Arsenal by hook or by crook to hang on with Liverpool, maybe with Nottingham Forest and others in the mix. Newcastle are now rampant and Chelsea aren't far off. Manchester City, could they rally from behind and sort of mix it again? But there's no reason why Arsenal shouldn't be there. And I expect them to be. I'm not saying they'll win it, but I think there would be huge disappointment among the fan base and the wider public who expect a lot of Arsenal this season if they don't challenge to win the league.
In your opinion, I know, I think we both know that Mikel Arteta's job at Arsenal is super safe. Do you feel, though, that the process that has led to progress has to result in success? There are some fans, of course, it's a good job they're not general managers, GMs or directors of football. But do you think that that has to lead to success this season? Do you see him progressing or regressing as a manager?
I think Mikel Arteta has done amazingly well since taking over from Unai Emery. First job as a number one, led Arsenal to the FA Cup within sort of a year. It was behind closed doors, wasn't it, during COVID 2020? And the way that Arsenal have kind of risen under him. We all remember the days before. It wasn't great towards the end of Arsene Wenger and in the Unai Emery time. So with the progress that Mikel Arteta has brought comes shifting expectations. And Arsenal to get back into the Champions League was progress, and to challenge Manchester City 2 years in a row was progress. They should challenge for the league title again. They should do better in the Champions League. The League Cup isn't out of the question yet. Let's see what happens in the second leg against Newcastle, and they're gone in the FA Cup. There is growing, frustration, anticipation among sections of the fan base. But I think he's done brilliantly well, Mikel Arteta, on the whole. And he's not perfect. There have been mistakes along the way, understandably. And there are certain areas where you'd like to see him improve in terms of the team, in terms of maybe the transfer market. But that's a collective thing. You can question some signings and selections, and we're all the best armchair managers ourselves. In response to what you're asking there, I don't think he has to lift silverware or he's out or something like that, or he's under huge pressure to go, because Arsenal, how do you define success? If they are going far in this title race, and then let's see if they actually get over the line or not. If they are pushing at the latter stages of the Champions League, if they manage to turn it around in the League Cup, let's see how they're playing as well. The atmosphere among the fan base, it needs to be a big end to the season, but that doesn't mean they have to be holding aloft trophies in my eyes. But Arsenal fans will need to see evidence that they're heading in that direction and not regressing from what we've seen in recent seasons. But really, without meaning to sound too harsh, it doesn't matter what we as the public, the media, the fan base think necessarily. We'd like to feel that our thoughts counted, but it's what the ownership of any club, and in this case, the Kroenkes, the board of directors feel. And even when MIKEL ARTETA was under external pressure at the beginning, do you remember when he turned it around with wins? I think it was against Norwich and Burnley and West Brom in the snow and the North London derby. There was no internal pressure. They were, other than what he puts on himself and the expectation to get results, no scrutiny on his job. That was never in doubt, and I don't think it is now. He's just signed a new contract. They're fully behind him, and I think they would like to be long into the future. If MIKEL ARTETA was not the Arsenal manager, he'd be snapped up within seconds by one of the biggest clubs, and he's set for a really good career in football management. So, yeah, I think despite some understandable disquiet outside of the club, internally they fully back him, and I can understand why.
Yeah, totally agree with you on that. And I still believe the title's not decided in January. Of course, it is that season. It's like some call it silly season, but is your busiest time of season. I put this photo up. Look, his phone's going. I put this photo up for Rebecca when we were on, because I remember the days, David, when I'd sit in front of the telly with my BBC CFAX, and all I would be doing was refreshing the page. This is how most Arsenal fans of my generation found out that we signed Dennis Bergkamp for a cool 7.5 million. It has shifted gears and moved along like insanely. Are you surprised by the insatiable appetite for transfer news by fan? Which fan base? It's probably the Arsenal fan base that is the most insatiable when it comes to transfer news.
Firstly, I remember that day turning on the television and 302 or whatever the page you brought up was typing in. There was Bergkamp. There was Arsenal signed Davor Suker and Thierry Henry on the same day. One of them led on CFAX or teletext, both, and then it got usurped and superseded by the next one. I think it was Suker first and then Henry second. So transfers have always been of intrigue and public interest. The market started in its current form, I think 2002, 2003. I turned professional in journalism in 2006. And so it was starting to ramp up within a few years. Big players were on the move. Sky Sports News was making a big deal of it. So other outlets and publications did likewise. And it started to become a sport within the sport. Then you had big days like Deadline Day or the end of the January transfer window in 2011 when Fernando Torres moved from Liverpool to Chelsea and Andy Carroll took a helicopter down from Newcastle to Liverpool to replace him. And then you got so many unforgettable days throughout the windows when Man United signed Falcao and Danny Welbeck moved to Arsenal when he was meant to be moving to Tottenham, and he was doing his medical on the England camp. Arshavin. I'm thinking of Arsenal examples because we're on this program, but all manner from different clubs as well. Dimitar Berbatov, Tottenham to Manchester United. So it was becoming box office. Like, get your popcorn out and just watch it unfold. And the reporting of it was exciting. There was adrenaline rush. There was razzmatazz. Always, like, sort of football fans want to know how their team's going to improve. It's the same in other sports with the draft in American football and basketball, and how you can get better. How can you inflict a wound on your rivals by taking one of their players?
Sol Campbell.
Sol
The
Campbell,
best
of course.
ever.
There's been some amazing free agent moves. So it's just become a frenzy, and my career has kind of developed in parallel to the transfer market just by chance. And then a lot of my contacts and connections have built around many types of stories around clubs, managers, changes, executive level, team news, injury, you name it. But in and amongst that, I've developed good relationships with many people across the industry who are involved in transfer news. So you get a real insight into this, and like the there's like a salivation from the public. Like you could report on a transfer during a match, even these days a big match, and the transfer news, if it's of sufficient magnitude, will get more conversation going and interaction on social media in particular. And then that spills into radio programs, podcasts, television station shows, that newspaper back pages, magazines, etc., in a bigger way than what was going on the pitch. It's absolutely extraordinary, and people really care about it. The tribalism is just like remarkable. Now, what you said about the fan base with the most insatiable appetite, Arsenal Twitter is huge, undeniably so, and hashtag announce Benzema was like the bane of my life for a period. That's all Arsenal fans wanted for one entire. It was like every notification I had one year, and I'll never forget. Actually, Arsenal were working on a deal for Benzema and Di Maria. They were exploring, and it ended up being Özil. The talks with Real Madrid eventually finished in that direction. But all of the fan bases to varying degrees. Manchester United, absolutely massive, because you're in a goldfish bowl when you support one team, so you think your team is the biggest on social media. Man United's massive. Chelsea's become pretty big with all their trading. Liverpool's always huge, and they take great interest in their transfers. But yeah, for the purposes of this show, I don't think there's anyone who gets quite so invested as Arsenal fans. And there's always a story bubbling in every single transfer window, even Raheem Sterling's loan on the last day of the last one. January's where you think it's going to be quiet. They suffer an injury, or an opportunity arises and they do a deal. The trolley dash of 2011 summer with the 5 players in the last couple of days. Arsenal has been the gift that just keeps on giving in the transfer market. It's good fun.
I've got a new hashtag for you. I'm sure you've had a few. And look, I have to ask the question because they'll kill me if I don't, right? About, Arsenal perhaps being active in this window. And of course, there's massive news bubbling today. I don't know if it's ITKs, if it's coming from a good source or whatever, but SESKO's a player that Arsenal have been interested in for a while. It's funny, fans' taste goes from Isaac to Gyökeres, and now it's like we've got to get SESKO. It would be the opportunities here for Arsenal to hit a home run, potentially to strengthen the squad, to really push for that final charge. Of course, financially, sometimes things don't work that way. But what do you think?
Yeah, it's this is where I take on the role of heartbreaker, right? And all the Arsenal fans get angry about me that I only deliver bad news. And I'm sorry about that. Call me the Undertaker. It's just it's not a nice position to be in. But no, and I must say, anyone who reports stuff in this industry has my ultimate respect. They really hardworking people, and as far as I know, they only report things in good faith and what they're hearing. I don't know other people's checks and balances around these things. I only know how I do it and at the places where I've worked. So I never like to undermine or shoot down, because everybody will have their sources. And also, you never know how things will develop, even if your understanding is slightly different at one point in time. It could change, and that's one of the quirks of this industry that people don't have much sympathy for. Situations at one moment might alter at another. At the time of recording this, my information is there are no talks between Arsenal and RB Leipzig for Benjamin Sesko. And he's not expected to move in this transfer window. Arsenal do have a long-standing interest in him. We've reported that very thoroughly on The Athletic. He's high on their recruitment list. He has been on that of a number of clubs too. Manchester United at various periods, I think, Chelsea. The list goes on, even before he joined Leipzig. And so they've explored it in the past. He signed his new contract. He's really important to Leipzig at the moment. They're fighting for better results in the Bundesliga. They need him. He's kind of like their best player. They're under no financial requirement to sell him. And therefore, sort of never say never in this industry, because you just don't know what will happen from 1 minute to the next if a club comes in with an offer that's too good to refuse. But that's not happened so far at Leipzig. They don't have an intention of selling him. The word that is coming back initially is like no chance from there. I've actually seen some reports just as we've gone on air to that effect. The fans would go crazy if Leipzig sold him at this moment, from what I hear. And I think he signed that new contract because he wanted to develop there for the time being. And so I don't think a mid-season move is on his agenda either. So let's see what happens more towards the summer. And yeah, that's just my information right now. So on others, Vlahovic has been mentioned very heavily. Arsenal tried to sign him in the past. He went to Juventus. Wouldn't be an easy deal to do by any means financially. And, Juventus, I think, would be open to selling him. I'm not aware of them being up for a loan. And at the moment, Arsenal have been sort of exploring potential overseas loans. So I don't know if that one would be suitable. And there's many other factors. Does he want to join Arsenal? Do Arsenal really want him? Is he the right style? How does he fit into their environment and their culture? That's not one I know of having developed at all either, I'm sorry to say. And then who else? Well, Isak is the apple of Mikel Arteta's eye. That's the one that he would love to sign, and many Arsenal fans would too in a dream world. But it's not a dream world, and we all want things that we can't have. And Newcastle have no intention of selling him. There's no release clause. Of course, they've been suggestions that they're not really making much progress in talks over a new contract. I don't know exactly. Of course, they'll want to retain him for as long as possible. And that's going to be, if anybody's going to prize him from Newcastle when he's their best player, he's one of the best strikers in the world. He's at the center of their project. What would it say about their project if they let him go? It's going to take an enormous offer for them to consider it. And maybe Arsenal will produce one at some point, but I don't know of that happening right now. I don't expect him to go anywhere in January. And so, the list will go on. There'll be more names that come into the frame from different parts of Europe, from the Premier League. People said Brian Mbeumo, he's not going to be leaving Brentford before the summer when he'll have 2 years left on his contract. A January move's not on the agenda. But he's liked. He's a fantastic player, Mbeumo. He's liked at Arsenal and elsewhere. But liking players, it doesn't mean it's going to happen. And these guys all come with big price tags and salaries. It all comes into the picture. If Arsenal indeed are going to go through with the deal for Zubimendi in the summer, that's sort of 65 million euros committed. So what are you able to do now? Can you spend big? We know there's a bit of room for maneuver, but how big? And if you do go big now, it doesn't mean that money is unlimited in this industry. We know with PSR, so somebody might have to go in the summer. It might have to be somebody big to make this all possible. Who would that be? So loads of factors involved in all of this. People say loan with an obligation, but that obligation will come on your PSR now. So it's like a permanent transfer now. It doesn't make much difference between permanent transfer now and loan with obligation. And that's why we're hearing more and more about an overseas loan. And let's see, things develop with Arsenal and other clubs that we're not expecting. We've seen that before. There's stuff that I will not know about that might come to fruition, and it wouldn't be for the first time. We know Arteta really likes Nico Williams at Athletic Bilbao. If he decides to go more for, they decide to go more for a wide player who can contribute to the attack. But I've discussed on many platforms that it's a 60 million euros release clause that needs to be paid in full. It's just shy of that at the moment, fluctuates with inflation. He's got a really high salary at the moment. That salary will need to go higher if he's going to move. There are other clubs in for him, like Chelsea, if he is going to move. Barcelona last summer. We know of him not agitating to leave now. Will he be more open to it in the summer? Yep, possibly not. And all manner of players. So I think Arsenal will do something. That's my assumption, because they're active in the market. They're having conversations, but I don't know who it is right now. And sorry to disappoint people on that.
Yeah, no, I mean, that was amazing. And that's the thing, like Premier League teams like West Ham aren't going to part with Kudus, are they? And Buemo's, in January, when you're fighting for so much, it always feels like an awkward window, David. You know, you feel like there's the teams that are challenging, and then there's the teams that are, you know, survival, and those sandwiched in the middle that would, you know, die for a European spot, like Brentford this season. It just seems very awkward. And also a player coming into the mix when Mikel is such a big culture guy. He's all about personality. It just seems that, yes, as fans, we want the big signings, but it just also seems that January is such an awkward month.
Yeah, it really is. And look, and I don't want people to misinterpret this, because I've said it before. Like, it's not Football Manager, and I hold myself guilty of some of this simplistic thinking as well. You can't just move pieces around at your whim and will. That's not the real world. And so there are very wealthy clubs who don't need to sell, don't want to sell, don't need to loan, don't want to loan. You might not be in a position to make something work from your end. You might not want something to work from your end. So people talk about Kudus. Yeah, Arsenal have looked at him in the past. I don't know of any sort of concrete move to sign him in the past. Don't know of any concrete move to sign him now. But then everybody talks about it like oh, we could do that. And so much goes into these decisions, and it's not straightforward, from transfer fee, salary, commissions, desire, culture, like you mentioned, the dressing room, combinations, visions and plans that they have for the team, for the squad, the building process, the age, injury history, things we don't even hear about, other competitors for these players. Believe it or not, it's not just who you want to sign. It's like the fact that other teams might be standing in your way. And then another thing I was going to mention is,
hopefully those other teams won't be signing anyone. I hope there's no big January. You know, in American politics, it's always the October surprise. In football, it's the January surprise.
Yeah, and there will be some activity, but there's and there are loads of conversations going on. That's why all of these stories are sort of coming out and bubbling away. It's as busy as I've known it in terms of people exploring opportunities. But it's not so straightforward for it to actually come to fruition in January. That's why it's always, for most clubs, and this is the case for Arsenal coming into January, a reactive window, because they didn't know they were going to lose Jesus to injury. You know, they didn't know they were going to lose Saka to injury. And if they hadn't, they probably wouldn't have been needing to consider this sort of position to strengthen in. They would have liked to have been focusing on the summer window, especially after the departure of Edu as sporting director. Jason Ato comes into the role on an interim basis. So there's upheaval within the club. And then, you know, another thing to point out is that, and this is not a popular thing to say, it would appear, but Arsenal have a first choice striker in Kai Havertz, who they spent £65 million on. And in his Arsenal career so far, he's done well, especially in the year 2024. Just look at his numbers. They speak for themselves. He's really popular among the staff, among the squad. And people can have their opinions, but you just can't suddenly just bring in a striker that will mean that Kai Havertz is cast aside with everything that he represents and the financials involved in it, or too similar a profile. Someone like Evan Ferguson that Arsenal have looked at in the past and has been well reported. Maybe that's a market opportunity for a club because he's not been playing so much, had a bit of injury, has his value dipped. Is it a chance to get him on loan? But you know, you don't want to bring in profiles that could clash or players that aren't compatible. And then they've got somebody like Gabriel Martinelli, like Leandro Trossard, like Ethan Nwaneri is going to come back from injury in the not too distant future, and everybody wants to see more of him play. So, you know, there are internal resources that when Arsenal click, that, you know, if they had finished even a slither of the chances they've had in the last 3 games, they would have scored hatfuls of goals. And we wouldn't be having this conversation. Now, everyone will turn around and say that's precisely why we're having it, because they're not finishing those goals. But Arsenal clicked at West Ham. I know Saka was playing then, and suddenly goal scoring wasn't a problem. And so, like, the creativity is actually there. And so I don't think it's necessarily like they're going to be panicked internally. But if the right opportunity arises, they're definitely going to try and do something. As you say, it's far from the ideal time for Arsenal or anyone else, but it is equally an opportunity.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got one more here for David before he has to duck out. It's a busy time for him, and all 630 plus of you in live chat, hit the like button. It's great content, and you're also getting it for free. No super chats here, none of that stuff. So please do hit the like button. It helps the channel. David, when I in my film publicist role, I always found dealing with the talent so much easier than dealing with the agents or the publicists or the communications people. There are a lot of great communications people in football, but do you find that's one of the biggest challenges, or do you enjoy and thrive in that environment where you're dealing with, so many different people, moving parts to do what you do?
It varies, Sophie. It's the nature of the beast. There's people in every part of this process reporting, whether it be about transfers or anything else day to day, interviews, features, news stories of a different nature. And yeah, you'd want to, like the old days, just call up the owner or the chief executive or the chairman or the manager or the player or their family. In some cases, it still works like that. In other cases, it doesn't. And so you've just got to adapt to all circumstances. I don't long for anything that is not happening in the industry. You just deal with what is. There are great communications officers at many clubs whose absolute pleasure to deal with. There are hard moments. There are difficult conversations. There are arguments. There are moments where they don't engage, that they try and block stories from coming out, that they tell you mistruths. But they've got their interest to defend, and I totally respect that. And they respect that we've got our job to do by and large. And most of the relationships are really strong. We've got strong relationships in certain places, whether it be clubs, governing bodies, other organizations within the industry, where you speak to the people right in the front line, doing it, involved, and it's all calm. Others, they clam up, journalists, like, I better not say anything. And more there are sort of barriers. I will concede that as the stakes are getting higher and clubs are becoming better organized, the money involved is bigger, and so there's layers of protection around players, around managers. You have to follow set procedures, but equally, as you navigate your way up through the industry, your contacts book improves, your relationship, the mutual respect, and in some cases, yeah, it gets harder, but in other cases, it gets not easier, but more is possible, because your organization, when I was at the BBC, it opened doors in certain places. Same now with the Athletic and others that I work for, do stuff with NBC and Sky, etc. And then your name, your reputation, helps the way you do stuff. If you do it properly and the right way, and have built up a decent track record, people might like to work with you where possible, or explain stuff because they like the way you handle it. So it's a really weird, wonderful, wild industry. There are a lot of good things. There are a lot of not so good things. I feel that actually in this sort of fragmented environment, where there's more creators and producers than ever before, more platforms, more outlets, social media in particular, many within the game are looking, if the news is going to come out anywhere, to share it or to explain it to, or react and pick the phone up or answer messages to people that do it right. And so that's maybe a benefit of this era, but there's no set way of doing. There's good practices and great ethics and values that need to be applied, but there's no syllabus or script to this. There's no potion in a bottle that this is how I do it. A lot of it's done on touch and feel and decency, and communication, meeting, talking, speaking. Talking which, I've got a call coming through now about a transfer. So yeah, it's amazing, and ultimately it's only football, Sophie. It's transfers, and we should try and have a bit of fun at the same time, and like respect one another. The anger on social media, misinterpretation, misrepresentation of things and people and what they say. Like, be kind. The Kai Havertz and stuff after the Man United game towards his wife was horrific. Like, I think the way Ange Postecoglou was treated by sections of a small section of the fan base in the FA Cup was horrific. One of the players, their reported racial abuse online afterwards, horrific. We need to sort of rise up against that nonsense and really try and show people the love. And
you got abuse for your Aubameyang interview.
Yeah, and I was trying
some
to
of that
fight
stuff
back.
was crazy. Yeah,
yeah. And like people didn't read the interview. They sort of saw a bit on social media or the promotion of it and just made their decision and were very angry. And people are entitled to their views, but do it in a calm way and talk about it and read things or listen or watch when we've reported. Don't just take the aggregator standalone quote. Go and find it and understand what was said and the context in which it was said, and realize that most of the time people like me are not doing it to upset anyone for bad reasons. To the contrary, we're trying to do our job properly, trying to explain. We're not trying to antagonize, and we're kind of in many cases like the bearer of the news rather than the sort of creator of it. Things are happening inside clubs, and we're doing our best to relay it. But I think there is a need for there's a majority of really great people out there. There's a minority of not so good behavior. The minority tends to be louder than the majority, and maybe we can reverse that a little bit.
We're doing our best here at Squad Central, and there are other great shows as well in the Arsenal community that support positivity, and we'll be critical and have our opinion, but you know, it's always with love in our hearts for our club. Mr. David Ornstein from The Athletic, NBC Sports, and the Sports Journalist of the Year. I'm sure you're going to win again in the upcoming, I think the nominations closed in the last couple of days.
Oh, wow.
I can't begin to tell you how much I appreciate you coming on the show.
Not at all.
Every single guest gets a 30-second exit. What do you want the squaddies to know? What is your message to Arsenal fans? You have the last word.
Oh, you've put me on the spot now. Well, firstly, thank you. It's a real pleasure to be on, Soph, and I think the world of you and your work. Secondly, to everybody watching, thank you. And I get amazing support and feedback and interaction on social media, respect when I meet people in public, very little abuse from Arsenal fans and fans of pretty much every club. So keep enjoying and supporting. That's what you're there to do. It's fun, it's sport, and I know it means more than that to many of you. But in terms of Arsenal, you've got a great squad there, a great manager, and a good hierarchy that has built well compared to a lot of the strife you had in the past. So try and embrace it, enjoy the ride. It could be a good ending to this season. And what's for certain with Arsenal is that it won't be dull. So try and ride the undulations, strap yourself in, and we look forward to how it shakes up at the end.
That's all, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you, David, again. Don't forget to tell your loved ones you love them, squaddies. You know the rules here at Squad Central, and at ease. See you soon.
Mind the gap between the train and the platform. Please stand clear of the discussion doors. The next stop is Highbury Squad.